Look, playing in a sport that is as tribalistic as football, it's inevitable that you're going to step on the toes of someone now and then. It's gonna happen. You're going to make a certain fan base or fan bases upset along the way. Sometimes it's just taken as read due to playing for a rival or a dominant team. You're going to get hate for that. But then there is the possibility of hurting those who used to chant your name and supported you through everything simply because you signed for a rival or disrespected them in even considering signing for a rival. Well, Lukaku is seemingly determined to burn every bridge possible at the moment. Some, not all, but some Inter supporters were hurt when he left for Chelsea, while others understood that the club's hands were tied, and his sale helped them to stay afloat financially. At Chelsea, the nostalgia and unfinished business card was played at first, only for an interview to derail things for him once again at Chelsea, the club he dreamed of playing for when he was a kid. But clearly, that has long since been forgotten. And would you believe it, he has now gone against the family, so to speak, at Inter, despite saying everything right, leaving him with very few fan bases that will support him, let alone trust his word, a mess of his own making. How are you, and welcome to Rabona TV. For any of you who are new to the channel, then welcome. I am Adrian, and if you enjoy this rundown of the Lukaku situation, then be sure to subscribe. We'll have a video on a certain talent that signed with Real Madrid recently that you won't want to miss. Potential generational talent here. Should all go right, of course. But that's all I'll say, as we don't want to contribute to the pressure on the kid. Not like he'll see this video anyways, but still. But yes, for this video, we will look at Lukaku's situation he's gotten himself into, how he keeps on talking out of both sides of his mouth, and how he has managed to get one of the last fan bases who truly support him still to turn against him. Vamos. Let's start by setting the stage a bit here in the past so that the present makes some sense. Lukaku joined Inter Milan from Manchester United in 2019 after pissing off the Red Devils by posting what was deemed to be confidential player data on social media. What did he post? Well, in retaliation to everyone calling him slow, he posted the results from the sprint tests that he underwent at Manchester United during preseason, and how he was the second fastest player in the entire squad. That of course didn't go down well, and coupled with everything else from his Manchester United stint, the mission to find Big Rom a new club went into overdrive, and despite Inter's early efforts to sign him failing, Antonio Conte eventually got the man that he wanted. He wanted him at Chelsea as well, so expectations were high when they finally linked up together at Inter. And by all metrics, I'd say it's safe to say that Lukaku met those expectations under Conte. The first year was good, not much to speak of trophies-wise, while the second year, Lukaku turned into a monster alongside Lautaro, endearing himself to the Interisti with words of how much he loved the club and the city, how happy he was to be there, etc., etc. And just to reiterate, Lukaku in his second season under Conte was incredible and perhaps one of the most complete strikers in Europe at that moment. Most complete. He was holding up play. He was terrifying when he was running at defenses with the ball at his feet. Just ask Romagnoli. He was getting in behind. He was finishing well. He was setting up his teammates, and he was a leader on the pitch as well. He was Conte's on-pitch deputy. Unfortunately, due to financial issues at Inter, despite winning the Scudetto, they had to make weight. And while they would have ideally kept Hakimi and Lukaku, two of their stars, they were also two of their most marketable assets. In Chelsea, Inter found a buyer. Like I said, his performances under Conte had done enough to convince Chelsea that the then 28-year-old was a worthy investment. And fair enough, I think most believed that the change he had under Conte would last. Things actually started pretty well with Lukaku. He looked fantastic against Arsenal. There were other matches along the way where he looked like a difference maker, such as against Aston Villa, but Tuchel was playing around with the shapes and the attack a little bit to try and get the attack going. Lukaku looked to be at his absolute best at Inter when he had a striker to play off of. At Chelsea, he didn't have that all the time, and his performances began going downhill after a strong start. Now, you may remember the after effects of the interview, but perhaps you missed the significance of it all right down to the title of the show he appeared on. After working through an injury in the fall and COVID in December of 2021, Lukaku agreed to do an interview with Sky Italia for a program titled Inter, Sorry If I Call You Love, which is inspired by Italian romance novel writer Federico Moccia, who popularized the act of locking padlocks onto bridges as a way for lovers to express their eternal devotion to each other. So yeah, the symbolism, not great from a Chelsea perspective. Now, Lukaku used the interview as a way of apologizing to the Interisti, but it came across as the equivalent of him leaning to the camera and saying, don't care about these guys, honestly. Just ignore every good thing I say about them, as I can't wait to come back to Inter, you know? That's not what he actually said, though. What he actually said was, quote, "I think that everything that happened shouldn't have happened the way it did. How I left Inter, how I communicated with the fans, this bothers me because it's not the right time now, but it wasn't the right time when I left either. Now I think it's right to talk because I have always said I have Inter in my heart. I'll go back and play there. I really hope so. I am in love with Italy. This is the right time to talk and let people know what really happened without talking bad about people, because I'm not like that. First of all, I want to apologize to the Inter fans because I think the way I left should have been different. I should have spoken to you earlier because the things you did for me, for my family, for my mother, for my son, are things that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Because I'm 28, my family was happy in Milan, and I still have a flat in Milan. I said to myself, next year my son will come and live here, and my mother too. We'll live all together in Milan. We'll be happy." Along the way, he also made it abundantly clear to Chelsea supporters that his heart was in Milan by revealing for the first time that he had asked Inter for a new contract, but he still had to go ahead with the transfer, as Inter also did everything they could, but the sale was inevitable. Couple that with how he said he was frustrated with how things were going at Chelsea, and yeah, it was no surprise that he pissed everyone of a Chelsea persuasion off. Oh, and there's the cherry on top of it all, with the second quote being his answer to a question about Lautaro joining him at Chelsea, to which he answered, quote, "I hope from the bottom of my heart that I can one day go back to Inter, not right at the end of my career, but when I'm still at a good level, so we can hopefully win more trophies." And to Lautaro, he said, "No, stay there, I will come back." I mean, you can understand why Chelsea supporters were so upset. In trying to smooth things over with the fan base of the previous club, he upsets the fan base of the club he's currently at, and they turned on him quickly. Understandably so. Already his move was quite controversial amongst Chelsea supporters, mostly by those who hadn't watched him in Serie A, because let's be fair, if they had, they would have been excited about his move, assuming his form would translate to the Premier League. For one reason or another, take your pick, it didn't, or at least it didn't get the chance to before Lukaku blew it all up with that interview. At the end of it all, his return to Chelsea saw him score 15 and get 2 assists in 44 appearances. And with chaos rocking Chelsea as Abramovich was ousted and Boli and Clearlake took over, nobody could look past what Lukaku had said in the interview. And the man got his wish, a move back to Inter on loan. At the time, a lot of people looked at this as Inter absolutely fleecing Chelsea, some laughing at Chelsea as if they had just been ripped off. They had in some respects, yes, but Lukaku was dangerously out of form for pretty much the entirety of the season at Inter, bar when he found himself again in March of 2023, after the March international break. His assist numbers went up, but he still scored just 14 goals in 37 appearances and was outperformed by a 37-year-old Edin Dzeko, who was Inzaghi's preferred striker to start alongside Lautaro Martinez. Injuries didn't help Lukaku, but when judging the value of a move for a player and whether they got their money's worth, you have to consider how available they were as well. Given his injuries and lack of form at the start of the season, overall Lukaku's move wasn't anything to write home about. The worst of his 3 seasons with Inter by a long shot. But he still had some decent charitability with the Inter supporters. Of all of the fan bases that he has been associated with in the past, the Inter supporters, not all, but a lot of them, still had Lukaku's back. And oh, how things would change this summer. After gaining some good form to close out the Serie A season, Lukaku featured in the Champions League final for Inter, with their supporters hoping that this fine form would help them to a European title against Manchester City and make right what went wrong in the last European final they competed in together, the COVID Europa League final, where Lukaku, scored an own goal, the decisive own goal. Unlucky. Coming onto the pitch for the final 30 minutes, Lukaku spurned a couple of decent chances, as well as getting in the way of a header that was headed goalwards. Somewhat unlucky with the blocked header, even if people really leaned into that one, but he was snatching at everything else. It wasn't a great performance. Again, in spite of all of that, there was a large population of Inter supporters that still believed in Lukaku and wanted him to join permanently, and still held him close to the heart given all of the nice things he had said about their club, city, and the performances he had put in. There were still many who believed that he could find that form again alongside Lautaro to rekindle the Lalu partnership if he was given a good run of games at the beginning of the season and he was able to stay healthy. Doubters pointed to his form in crucial matches, such as that of the 2022 World Cup as well against Croatia, and his cameo in the final of the Champions League. They point to those as reasons to doubt him. Well, skip ahead to July of 2023 and the entire fan base has turned on him, as well as those from a club he doesn't even play at. It was revealed in mid-July that after a couple of months of trying to come to an agreement with Chelsea for the transfer of Lukaku to Inter, that Inter had indeed retracted their interest, including their bid that was basically on the money as far as Chelsea's demands. Why? Because it had been made known that Lukaku was negotiating with and entertaining offers from Juventus. First of all, let's go back to December of 2021 when Lukaku was interviewed by Sky Italia. In that interview, he was asked about approaches from AC Milan or Juventus, to which Lukaku replied, quote, "If Juventus or AC Milan will call me in the future, never, never. Again, never. It's never going to happen. Juventus wanted me before Inter, but when Conte joined Inter, it was my priority to join them. In Italy, there's only Inter for me." Well. What we know right now, based on the strongest reports out there, is that Inter have completely pulled out of any deals for Lukaku, saying they will move on to someone else. And that's completely understandable. After everything he had said in all of these interviews, only to even entertain the idea of playing for Juve, after saying how much you love Inter and how Inter is the only team in Italy for you, I mean, of course Inter fans aren't going to be happy about that. On top of that, he and his lawyer, Sebastian Leder, had allegedly gone AWOL with Inter, not answering any of their calls for almost 48 hours. Everything was in agreement. Chelsea and Inter had an agreement, while Lukaku and Inter had personal terms agreed. All they needed was the go-ahead from Lukaku, who wasn't answering his flip phone. Imagine you're Inter, in a precarious position financially compared to, free spending clubs, doing all that you can to bring Lukaku back to the club, showing all of your faith in him despite a poor previous season. And yet he has allegedly agreed to terms with your most hated rivals in Juventus. I mean, it's no wonder why they were so upset. And I mean, with this most recent incident, it's safe to say that he is making a habit of burning bridges. He also has another funny habit, which is to kiss the badge of pretty much every club he's played for. But this sort of treachery, if you want to go that far, when coupled with what he did on his Chelsea return regarding the interview, only to go behind the backs of Inter like that, I feel like a lot of clubs have lost faith in his word at this time, that he's not trustworthy. And unfortunately for Lukaku at the moment, he doesn't have incredible performances to be his safety net in this situation. The man will have to apologize to Chelsea, who have said they do not want him back at the club and are willing to take a loss on him in a sense. And he will have to apologize to the Inter supporters as well. And I don't know if there's any going back from that. Speaking of Inter supporters, a story came out in the Gazzetta that said that Lukaku had reached out to one of the leaders of the Curva Nord, the Inter Ultras, in order to deny that he had any agreements with Juventus. Well, said leader, Marco Vertico, has vehemently denied any contact with Lukaku, taking to Instagram to label such stories as fake news. In fact, the Curva Nord statement pulled no punches. I mean, as one would expect of some ultras. They said, quote, "We hope to never see each other again, Lukaku. You have betrayed all of us. We always defended you in difficult moments. Now you give us a stab. You are selling yourself to the highest bidder after kissing our badge. You're not a real man." For Juve's part, well, a supporter group showed up outside of J Medical in order to protest any potential moves for Lukaku, which is reliant upon the sale of Dusan Vlahovic, by the way. So, Lukaku finds himself in a situation where he has burned bridges with the two clubs that were closest to him at one time. According to him, of course, in Chelsea and Inter. Both sides are angry with him and have claimed that they do not want him at their club next season, leaving him with a future that's as clear as mud. Stuck at Chelsea? Burn a bridge with Inter by going to Juve? Accept one of the Saudi offers? Or something else entirely? With Romelu Lukaku, whatever he chooses, it's going to turn some heads. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, drop a like for me to let me know. Other than that, have yourself a great day, and we'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.